Receiving the rear device, this is the unboxing of it. When you get ready to unbox the rear device, open it up. You'll pull out your two pieces, verify that it's for the correct bike. This is for a KTM 125, Husky 125 and larger. This is the B base. This is the latch that comes with it. You'll notice there's the two bolts, and in here you got your instruction manual and your Tamer sticker. In your instruction manual is where you'll see the distance of mounting this thing right here. This will tell you whether you got a track shock or an OEM WP shock. We're installing a rear device on a 2017 KX250F. The first thing you do is you got to remove the rear linkage, lift the back wheel up, work it out, set it back down and swing this down out of the way. Next, take your wrench, remove your lower shock nut, remove the bolt. And on this particular bike, not all bikes, but this particular bolt goes in this way. It's got to go in from this side for this to work. So you've got to rotate this shock shaft. So all you do is take a screwdriver, stick it in there, rotate it 180 degrees. You just got to kind of move your stuff around, finagle it a little bit to get it to where you want it. Make sure it lines back up again. Now you're ready to install the latch. Remove these two bolts and these two bolts, and we'll apply blue Loctite to them inside. Lift this back up, slide your linkage up into place, put your latch where it needs to go, slide your bolt through, install your lower shock nut, bolt nut, and tighten that down. Latch is installed. Take a tape measure, Sharpie, on this particular bike from the center of your front pivot bolt. On the linkage arm, you go down and you make a mark at 2 1/4. Each bike will be different, but it'll tell you in the instructions what this mark will be. From the center of this front linkage bolt, 2 1/4 inches. Take your backer plate bolt and your backer plate. These are 20mm bolts. These are 25mm bolts, so there is a difference. Install the top bolt. Get it in until there's about an 1/8 inch or 3/16 gap between the backer plate and the base right here. Take this, swing the base over, and then the front surface of this base will touch that line. That's where you line that up, and that sits just like this. Now at this point, you can snug this bottom, one of the bottom bolts down to hold it in place, and you're going to make a mark here and a mark here. Remove this, and now you're going to take a file, and you're going to remove this ridge right here on just this side, right here, and make sure it's flat, and then you go to the inside. You're going to do the same thing. You can do this with a file, a Dremel tool, or we use a little belt sander to do it. Next, take your last base mounting bolt and get it installed from behind and tighten it down, and then tighten the top one down. And one of the things you really got to pay attention to here that's really important is to make sure that when you tighten these backer plate bolts down, that they both protrude through the base about the same distance. You don't want one stuck back in here and one sticking way out. That means your backer plate is at an angle back there and it's going to catch stuff. By being through the same distance, you know that it's tight. So then at that point, you tighten these down tight. And your backer plate bolt, when you tighten these down, your backer plate will actually bend or bow around the back of your linkage arm. But you want these tight, because if it ain't tight, it ain't going to stay in place. Okay, those are both tight. Go back. It's now time to tighten the base mount bolts down and get these plenty tight. Keep in mind, I go back and forth between these two. As you tighten this down, it actually spreads this base apart. So it's really important to make sure you tighten down these backer plate bolts first. If you tighten these down first and try to tighten these down, is what it does. It actually spreads this whole apart, and then these don't want to line up, and then you got to crank on them, tighten them down. So use these, snug them up to hold it in place. Go ahead and get your backer plate on, tighten it down. Make sure the bolts are coming through the same distance so you know that that's square in the back. Then go back and tighten these down. Snug up your jam nuts after everything else is tight, and tighten down these jam nuts. Okay, everything's tight. Now swing your linkage arm back into place. Some bikes you have to lift this up to get it past and lift it into place and then let it back down, but on the Kawasaki, not needed. Put your linkage bolt back in. Put your linkage bolt nut back on. Tighten down. And we're now ready to try it out and make sure it works. Button slides in. These are through the mount, the same amount. These are tight. My jam nuts are tight. Everything's got a little bit of amount of blue Loctite on it. Don't use a ton of Loctite, because remember, this has to come off sometimes, so you don't want to have to fight it to get it off or ruin the bolts to get it off. That's it. Now ready for the back one, so we do it on 3. I put my hand here. I have my rider balance on the seat. So I put my finger down here. I put 2 fingers on the button, on the plunger, and a thumb on the button so I can follow it. And then we go on 3. 1, 2, 3. Just like that. It's got to go past, push the plunger in, hold it. When it comes back up, the bike rebounds, it'll actually catch the plunger, and then you can let go. So ready? 1, 2, 3. Just like that. It's just that simple. One question I get asked a lot is, how do I know this is set correctly? Depending on what your linkage is, all of our numbers are set up for an OEM linkage arm. You could be running a PR2 or a Riot Engineering or another type of a linkage arm. If you are, you obviously don't need to grind off this line right here, because they're CNC machines, so this thing fits on it nice and square. It might be higher. If it is, you might have to adjust this back and forth by an 1/8 inch at a time. If you move this back an 1/8 inch, it raises the seat up a 1/2 inch. If you move it forward an 1/8 inch, it lowers the seat by a 1/2 inch. By the relationship to the latch to the linkage arm is how that changes, so you can adjust it. How do I know it's set right? My rider can move around on the bike a little bit, not bounce around, but he can move around. He can take the play out of his pants, get ready for a start. He can put his goggles on. Chances are, if the bike starts real easy with a kickstart, you can usually do it. But if you have to kick hard, then the thing should come unlatched. Now, if you're moving around a little bit and it comes unlatched, you don't have it down far enough. You need to move it the button further forward. If you're moving around a lot and you can kickstart this thing hard and kick it 3 or 4 times and it doesn't come unlatched, there's a good chance that it's down too far. You need to move your button back. So as we'll see here, go ahead and unlatch it, Nick. When he unlatches it, just a little bounce like that, and that thing unlatches, which is by design. When that rear tire hits that starting gate, you want it to come unlatched. That's how we know we're set right. We can move around a little bit and it still stays latched.